Not exactly hidden. Yes, and I was promised a good night, but instead I was nearly drowned in gaudy overindulgence, dragged into borderline sociopathic family drama, and had a sintered sword swinging from my head via a drunkard. If I wasn't a soldier or sorcerer, I would be a corpse and likely thrown out in the trash for the serving staff to pick trinkets out of my pockets. It wasn't that bad, Uthtir says, and Koga gives her an incredulous look. Oh, let's drop the polite fiction. When one of the better things to happen in a party is legally considered suicide in most civilized space, there's a fucking problem. But that doesn't compare to the insane drama that is a woman smothering her child until she psychologically snaps and her siblings not only standing around and doing nothing to help her, but outright taking bets on how badly and in what way she will break. Hey, I didn't do anything to Alara, Banny protests. Exactly. Your sister needed help and you did nothing. You knew she was breaking and all you did was snicker up your sleeves at it. You may not have been the one who smothered her, but you still made a choice when you didn't help. And what could I have done? Bonnie challenges him. Cache of second-hand clothes, fake ID, some petty cash, and an express ticket to another planet. You could have splurged and rented an apartment for a year for her, and you still wouldn't even get to half the cost of that dress. Koga snaps back as he gestures to Banny and what she's wearing. If you threw in the whole thing, you could feed her for that year, get her a second-hand air car so she can get around and still have plenty left over. But no, you'd rather use that kind of money to have a spectator seat as she slowly starts to crack under your mother's ego. Hey! Garcisom protests and Koga just turns to her. You're an alien sorcerer, right? Right, Koga confirms. Cool. Is Alara gonna be safe? Yes. Good. Night, Garcia says before sitting down and then flopping onto the grass and immediately snoring. How is it that the drunken idiot is the one that's pissed me off the least? Koga asks, gesturing towards the woman who clearly has no dignity left, as her dress is hiked up far enough to show that she's wearing lingerie underneath it. He snaps his hand and a buffeting wind sweeps in to push her dress into a more dignified position and then turning back to Uthtir and Terifwus. It's time to go. I've had my fill of this place. Now wait just a minute. Alara Salm says, taking a step over her unconscious daughter and ruining the last chance that neither she nor Koga consciously knew she had. But he feels it pass, and as he turns to face her, she sees the vines crawling down his face and slowly forming a snarling mask of nearly leaves and bark, so dark they seem almost pitch black. He turns away, and then he, Uthtir, and Terifwus are simply gone. He didn't touch the other two women, but all three are gone with the telltale woodsy whisper of dark forest sorcery. Koga pulls in a deep breath and withdraws the vines into a more passive position as he calms down. Well, that's one party that will be spoken of for ages. Uthtir notes, no doubt. Even worse for her, it's not like she can do anything. There are proper procedures for expressing grievances with another noble outside of open warfare. To touch a battle princess politically, one must go through the Empress herself, and sorcerers are just outside the system entirely. Terifwus remarks, although I'm wondering what's going to happen with Alara Salm the Younger. She's with Morg Arkan. He has plans to leave Serbo for a time, so that should give her the space she needs. Koga answers and mentally considers just how bad a situation is if you need to leave the planet in order to get enough distance from someone. It's kind of neat to think of a sorcerer as a dashing hero and not a huge danger or massive prize, Terifwus says. Heh, most girls grow up on movies of some great war, and the sorcerer suddenly crushing the war lady years later after her retirement and then carving through the army until a small group of new recruits with talent figure out the perfect way to... She trails off as Koga just stares at her incredulously. Like you've never watched a children's entertainment program. Okay, Fair enough, fair enough, he says as his mind goes back to all the cartoons he had watched growing up. Although to be fair, he had yet to actually see a Gundam, the harem comedy shows had been underselling things and, yeah. Well then, welcome to my home battle princess Terry Foos. I hope that you find it sufficiently accommodating, Uthtir says, and Terry nods happily. It may not have been as openly grating to me, but being away from that party is certainly a relief. What goes through people's heads when they do things like that? Terry Foos asks, as she shifts her shoulders and all three of them start heading towards the main entrance out of the garden. That it's a tiny expenditure of my immensely vast fortune to celebrate the life of my beloved child. The ultimate sticking point of that massive mess is that none of it was in malice. Ignorance and selfishness? Maybe, but not malice. Uthtir says before suddenly shifting posture and general expression as the door opens in front of them. Ah, Chiatum, excellent. As you can see, I'm going to have some guests tonight. Is that going to be an issue? None at all, milady. How was the party? Garish in the beginning before some truly extreme drama ended it early. Typical ostentatious fare then. The more indulgent of the nobility survive off drama as much as food and drink. May I take your shoes, milady, sir and madam? Siatom asks as she bustles all three of them into the building properly. Thank you, Koga says as he steps out of his geta and holds them up. The building is very quiet, but it's not that late at night. It makes sense. The Tyr estate was many things at once, a fort, an armory, a comfortable manor, and an office building. They're not at war, so the guards are stood down. The office workers have no doubt gone home for the day, so that would just leave the comparatively smaller amount of staff and guards a manor would need at night on hand. I'll have extra pillows sent to your bedchamber shortly, milady, Siatom says as she hurries around them to not only get all the shoes, but close the door to the outside as well. How do you think they're going to handle the... You know what? Forget it. They made their own choices, and if they have the guts to try something, then they have to go through the Empress first, Terry Foos says, and Koga smirks. Honestly, with the way some of the power plays go, I'm not sure if my invitation to the next party will be missed, or if they'll insist I come as a guest of honor. Uthtir notes, and Koga suddenly snorts in amusement. What's so funny? I just had the mental image of how they might try and get an invite to me, and my mind painted the picture of a message carrier just stopping at the edge of the dark forest and just slowly putting the letter on a route before running with a scream, Koga says. Not that funny, Terry Foos says, and he shrugs. The mind tends to paint far funnier pictures than anyone can describe, Koga admits. I suppose it can. This way, please, Uthtir says, and there's a mild waver in her voice. He knows more than enough about the layout to know she's leading them to her private chambers. He's not sure if he should share just how well he memorized the blueprint layout and how familiar he actually is of the Tyr estate and the surrounding grounds. No one really wants to know just how pervasive microscopic mold spores actually are. It requires some mental corkscrews and requires a lot of concentration, but it's entirely possible to use them like a real-time radar or video game minimap. Far too much focus, though. You need to keep track of millions, if not billions, of tiny things simultaneously, and while there are tricks to doing that, the amount of concentration required is so much that if you were in the rafters or something, then you could slip and fall and not even notice until you hit something on the way down. It's definitely a situation where technology has a heavy advantage. So, overall, good party? Bad party? Koga asks as they move through, and Uthtir lets out a snort. Interesting party in a good way. You didn't cause any problems and certainly stood out. It's been a wonderful night. Although trouble was attracted to you like a magnet, you certainly know how to divert it, Uthtir says. Don't you humans rate things out of 10? You're at an 8 by now. Oh? And is there a way for me to increase that score? Koga asks in an amused tone. You'll think of something, I'm sure, she answers. Something I might get in on, Terifus asks, and Uth-Tir puts a finger to her chin as she looks up theatrically. Perhaps. She answers with a smile before offering a wink. Through the last little stretch, she leads them both with a bigger sway in her step and tail as she brings them to her private chambers, just in time for a maid to exit with a nod before bustling off past them. I do hope you both will continue to favor me with your presence. The night is not yet finished, and I think we could all use some more sedate and refined companionship after the display at the Psalm Palace. Provided our mutual interest stays, I see no reason not to, Terifus says, turning to Koga, who lightly chuckles. Oh, putting it all on me, are you? He asks in an amused tone as he causes the vines along his scalp to relax and he ruffles up his hair, and it comes back down at last in his overgrown bowl-cut style. A little longer and he'll start pulling it into a ponytail, but it's in that shaggy place between short and manageable and long and manageable. I think I've been fairly well persuaded. Woo! One of the village echoes into his head and he flinches before sending back the mental equivalent of a flick in the forehead back to them. Something wrong? Uth-Tir asks in concern. Just the boys being goofy. I'm pulling away a bit so they don't end up spying on us, Koga admits. How close are they to you? Uth-Tir asks. That's the sorcerer's choice. If they want, they can be a living extension of the woods with all the power and just a living vessel of all of its sheer ability. You're never not the one in control, but you let it influence you and see through you more and more. Right now, it only knows where I am and that I'm in good health. I was wondering how things like that work out with characters like Vernon in the group. Oh, we ignore him deliberately when he starts getting too mushy, his wife. It's embarrassing how shameless they are, Koga says with a bit of a laugh. So you haven't learned all the delicate little points of an Apuk maiden from the ancient memory of the woods, Terifus teases. No, this means that I'm going to have to find them, all of them, Koga says as the door to Uth-Tir's bedchamber opens. It's a nearly universal trait in the galaxy. Everyone wants a bed bigger than they need. Technically, you can sleep just fine on a thin cot, but between the cot and a California king-size mattress, the only person on the cot is either a contrarian or has some sort of psychological issue. The massive bed with the gigantic white comforter on it has not only enough room for all three of them to have fun, but room enough for there to be several more people all at once. Family-sized, Uth-Tir says, although I will admit I'm often on the left side. To the left side, then. Unless you'd rather migrate from right to left? Koga asks, and Uth-Tir looks thoughtful for a moment.